Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you for joining us again today. We have a first on the Intentional Encourager podcast. The first husband and wife team to come on together on the Intentional Encourager podcast. My wife will not come on the Intentional Encourager podcast, but Lou Everett and Sherri McManus are on the Intentional Encourager podcast. They're entrepreneurs, they're trainers and coaches, and you can find them at the loueverettgroup.com. But you can find them here right now on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Lou, Sherri, how are you guys today?
We're fantastic,
Excellent.
Brian. Thanks for having us here. It's nice and sunny here in North Carolina, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah, that's great.
See, now you just had to, I try to give you a nice introduction, Lou, and it's just like, oh, it's just great here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, but I live in West Virginia. It's not that robust here. So no,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful sunny day. And I'm so glad you guys have joined us. And we were trying a couple of weeks ago to get this together, but we had power and internet issues here in West Virginia.
Yeah.
So let's start with what things have been like in North Carolina for you guys, especially. You're entrepreneurs. You have your own, running and having your own business. Take me through what the last year has been like around the COVID-19 pandemic as we record this, and kind of what was one lesson that you took from it that you kind of said the pandemic has taught us this.
It's actually been a very good year overall. Did you want?
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah,
I'll start,
please.
and you can wrap
Go
it up
for it,
there.
boss.
Yeah, I should have said, Sherri,
Yeah.
hey, you're a smart man, Lou Everett.
Hey,
I'm telling you, go
that's
for
okay.
it, boss. Yeah. Well, I
Keep
should have
pointing
asked
in the right
Sherri. I
direction.
should have said Sherri. Ladies first. The question goes.
Yeah, it's okay. We give the eyeball, and we know who goes next. We're good.
We
Yeah.
have friends who are like, this should be the Sherri show, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, no.
Oh, I have a feeling it's going to be the Sherri show. So no, I know.
It already
Sherri-
kind of is.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Sherri, go ahead. I want to get your perspective because again, I think men and women tend to take crisis and process crisis a little bit differently. And let's be honest, we've been through it. The pandemic has been a crisis. So Lou, you mentioned it's been a very good year. Sherri, go ahead and piggyback off of Lou's statement there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this whole crisis, Lou and I, we independently have been leaders, and we have our own backstories, and then together we're leaders. And really, we were born for these moments. As tough as they are, people need to step up. This is where people can step up and be that solid object where people are lost, they're confused, they don't know what's happening with this, rightly so, with that. But there are people that bubble up to the top that need to stand up and to be that calm in the storm. And that's what we chose to do. As soon as this crisis hit, the secret sauce for us anyway, is to really lean into our leaders and our mentors and our coaches. And that's what really helped us to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And they were actually working through this as well. So they were kind of in the midst, just like everybody. But again, they were leaders in our industry that we wholeheartedly leaned into, and we turned it around and giving value to others. And was an opportunity. How can we help our network? How can we help everybody and anyone that can listen? And that's what we did. We ended up turning up the dial, even though we were consistent in what we were doing, putting ourselves out there every day consistently, but had an opportunity to really turn it up and to say, listen, we're here for you. And, maybe you can go into what we did, but we really turned up the dial, like I said, to really give value. And that's what we're about, giving value and sharing value, that everybody has it. Everybody has that value. It's just pulling that out. And that's what we love to do.
Sherri, I love what you said there. Lou, I'll come to you
That's okay.
Real quick, piggybacking off of that, but I've got to go here for just a minute. I love what you said about giving value. And I have a saying, there's a vast difference between value and appreciation. A lot of people say, well, I appreciate you. And I think, appreciation a lot of times can be just a throwaway thing. And I mentioned this in my book, People Buy From People. It's almost reactionary. It's kind of like if somebody does something, oh, thank you, or you go to the store and get something, oh, thank you. The cashier says thank you. You feel like you have to say thank you. And there's a vast difference between appreciation and value. Lou, when you mentioned that, I want to kind of direct the conversation this way to you for a minute, piggybacking off of what Sherri just said. Sure. In what ways did you find value being poured into you and Sherri through this? Because when you give value, and everybody defines value differently, but when you decide I'm going to intentionally give what I feel is valuable, there's obviously things that come. What value was poured into you that you were like, man, this is just, it's encouraging, it's helpful, it's strengthening me right now?
Yeah. Well, you see, with Sherri and I being a married couple, there's a lot of things, and we're business partners, so there's a lot of things we have to think about, right? We have our own marriage and our own personal life that we also have to keep strong, while at the same time, our mission is to help other people. And so, but in order for us to do all of that, we have to make sure that we are also fed and that we continue to grow. And as Sherri mentioned, we have some solid mentors and coaches that we rely upon during these times, all the time. And what was poured into us was they foresaw that this is coming. There's going to be this. We have a feeling there's going to be this lockdown because of COVID. There's going to be, and people are going to be in dire need of encouragement and dire need of their focus to stay strong. And they provided us a lot of that guidance. We spent days on calls and in some trainings with our mentors and coaches on ways that we can add value and help other people. But what's great about who we align ourselves with is they pour into us first. Okay, this is, as a leader, this is what you got, this is your responsibility. And this is how you grow yourself so that you can give more to other people. And so with all of that encouragement and that training that we received during a very short amount of time, so we can then begin to come up with ways to give back, that helped us to remain motivated and refocused on our mission of transforming today's leaders. And you have to be a solid leader yourself for that to happen. And so that's what we did. And then we began right away to get to what you were asking, what we did specifically. Right away, we said, we've got to give right now. And so we created a mastermind that was really a study of 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. It's a book by John Maxwell, and
one of my favorite books. I love it. Yeah, I've read it a couple times. Yeah,
it's like a blueprint, really. Mm-hmm. And no matter how many times you go through it, depending on where you are in life, right, it can change perception. It can change meaning. So we immediately, we got this 8-week thing. We gave it away. Whoever wants to join, just come on in. We're going to facilitate this. And that was just one of the items we did. We began to find out who can we go and speak to, where can we go and talk to give encouragement, and none of which we charge anything for.
Lou, I want to jump in here real quick. Sure. You are hitting on something here that is valuable to keep in mind. Mm-hmm. You guys are working with leaders in companies and things like that, right? But you are proactive in seeking mentoring and coaching first. And it's something that I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about, because I've talked to people and I was like, okay, in your business, they did a lot of, and I'm not saying that that's wrong,
right?
But you guys are mentors and coaches yourself. Mm-hmm. And you said, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and get some coaching and mentoring ourselves. Mm-hmm. Was that something that, and Sherri, Lou, either one of you take this question, was that something that just came instinctively to you, or did you really have to think through it? Because that is really contrarian thinking, right? I mean, it is counterintuitive to the way that your business works and things like that. So yeah, Lou, I know you're ready to answer that. So go ahead, go for it.
Okay. Well, we've always, see, when we realized we were going to fire up this business, and we realized our passion for this business. We knew already then that we had to align ourselves with the right people. And we had to make sure we had solid coaches and solid mentors and solid leaders to look upon. So we knew this already. So we've had coaches and the mentors and coaches we've had now for several years. And it was at that moment, it became instinctive for us to say, well, let's lean into these. What's great about it is because we're so in tune to our coaches and mentors, because our coaches and mentors aren't just, John down the street. Our coaches and mentors are people that have been doing this for years, people that are well known. I mean, John Maxwell is one of our mentors and one of our coaches. And so is Paul Martinelli and some of these other, I've got a speaker coach, I've got a coach, I've got an empowered living coach, I've got a sales coach, I've got a coach. And you've got to have those things for all aspects of your life. And so for us, it was like, okay, let's see what they're saying here so that we can lean into that because they're successful at what they do and it aligns with our mission. So it became instinctive for us at that moment because that is what we've been relying upon for our success for a long time.
No, and I love it because, again, it is the power of taking in these ideas, these thoughts, and I'm saying this in the new book that I'm writing, The Intentional Encourager. You have to encourage yourself first before you can encourage anyone else. And Lou, I love what you said there. And Sherri, I'm going to come to you in just a moment. But Lou, I love what you said there about taking that in internally, because it was a lesson that I had to learn about encouragement, that I was not good at encouraging other people when I was not encouraged myself. Right. And I have had to work to be intentional about what motivates me every day. And for me, it's prayer. It's getting myself in tune with the Lord. And so that I can get my mind in the right place. So I'm not a bear with my wife when I wake up in the mornings or kick the cat, something like that, And so, Sherri, from your perspective, what was the one thing that really resonated with you as you guys began to start this process of really reestablishing that coaching thing? Did you have a moment where you were just like, this is it? Because, and Lou, I mean no disrespect. For me, a lot of times my wife can bring some clarity to me.
Oh, yeah.
That, and I love the dynamic of the two of you together as business partners and husband and wife, because my wife will say something to me at times. I'm like, that's pretty brilliant. Like that's really brilliant. And my wife is a behind the scenes kind of girl. Like she, I kidded but speaking to people and doing this is not her cup of tea whatsoever.
Got to use each other's strengths.
Yeah. And listen, Lou, I would have a better chance. Of going to Arizona and throwing an inning for the Reds in spring training than I would to get my wife to come on the Intentional Encourager bike. And I'm a Bengals fan. I'd have a better shot of starting week one for the Cincinnati Bengals over Joe Burrow than getting my wife on the Intentional Encourager podcast. But
I get it.
But Sherri, I've got to ask you this. What was the one moment for you where you were just like, I think this really makes sense? Because I love the intuitiveness. And as we're recording this today, it's International Women's Day. So you're the perfect person to ask this question. The intuitiveness that you felt in yourself, that you said, okay, I think it's time for us to go in this route.
Well, that kind of leads into our my near-death experience, right? I mean,
and we will get to we will get to that. We will get to that. I want to.
Hold that one. Hold on.
Yeah, I want to build to that. Yeah, I want to build that. We'll get there soon, I promise.
Okay.
But, so you're asking more like what is it?
Middle of COVID, maybe?
Like what?
Yeah, exactly. Because again,
why we made this? What made a decision of like, hey, you were giving away?
Yeah, Lou. And here's where and forgive me for maybe not asking the question in the right way. But you guys are 50-50 business partners. You guys are equally invested in this thing. But I wanted, and I know what you were telling me about having your coaches and things lined up, and I love that. Sherri, I want to know from your perspective, for you, what was the moment of clarity? Because Lou, you mentioned it. You were getting those things in order yourself. Talk to me, Sherri, about those moments of clarity for you. Were you guys going through coaching together? Were you doing it separately, or what were some of your takeaways from what you guys were doing?
Yeah, we were actually doing it, I guess half and half. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, like,
some were
depending
together,
on his
some
schedule.
were
Yeah, depending on his schedule, I'm like, hey, you really got to go through this teaching, or let's together listen to what our mentor says, and we were taking down notes. But I think what really helped me is that, really just take that moment to be, okay, now I have all these resources and all this good information, and it would be sinful to not share that. It's like wrapping a present, a beautiful present for the perfect person, and then never giving it away. It's like, why do that? So so we were, it's that saying where you fill your own cup up overflows, and that's what it was. It was filling our cup up, and it was so overflowing that we had to do something. Yeah. And being as a woman, but also business owners together, it's not a man and a woman situation. It's a people situation. People are hurting. People had no idea what was coming. They didn't see it like the way that we were. Lou is a great visionary, that he sees things at a bird's eye view that sometimes I just don't see. I'm a little bit like, oh, okay, I see it now. But that's where he and I complement with each other's strengths. But not everybody gets to experience that or tap into it. So I know through our networking and building rapport with our partners, our clients, people that are within this triangle, North Carolina, but even outside of that, people
even international.
Yeah, international. People are struggling, people are hurting, and we're more alike than we are different. So why not tap into our strengths? This is where we ended up shining, and share that with the world, because our message is so bigger than us.
Before we step aside and take a break, Lou, I've got to ask you something, and I love what Sherri just said there. So I want to transition this question to you.
Sure.
Sherri just said you've got you have a big picture view of things, and I love that. When you were looking at this situation around the pandemic in the first couple of months, what were you seeing from the 30,000-foot view?
Well, there was a couple of things that really stood out to me. Number one, I knew we were going to get through it. I was also able to see, based upon the history of humans and people over the years, that not only were we going to get through it, it was also going to be a very different world when we came out of it. And so what can we do to guide them in that, guide them in through the process, with also not overwhelming them with ideals of having a new world, so to speak, or a new norm, because people take a while before they can divorce from or separate from what they've been used to and accustomed to, because it's something we're programmed in our mind to just get used to, be comfortable with. So that really from that, and that was number one. Number two, I also could see, and as we were talking, that there was going to be a lot of struggle with leaders in companies and corporations that had a lot of responsibility over people. They weren't going to know what to say and what to do in a situation like this. At least we would hope that they would. But my vision and my view was, they're not going to know. And there's going to be so many of them that are going to step back and not say anything in hopes that things will just boil over. That's usually what we want to do in crisis. However, our voice was responsible as leaders to say, we have to speak up. We have to say something that's going to help our people and give them what's necessary for them to be successful through this situation. We have to lean on their leader in this time. And as a leader, accepting that responsibility and that, frankly, that burden of being a leader of people. And if you want to be a positive, influential leader, the one thing we need to make sure we do is always have a voice for our people, so they have some solid object, something they can rely upon and hold on to during this time of crisis. And we wanted to be a voice from both perspectives. And we still are, because we're still going through that transition, right?
Yeah.
And we're seeing it now. It is different now. It is new, and it's still uncomfortable. But there's so many good things that have come out of what we've already been through over the last year. And sometimes it's difficult to step out of the situation and look in it again and see just what good has come out of what we've been through so far.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Let's step aside, take a quick break. Back in a moment here on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Hey, everybody, Brian Sexton here. I want to tell you about our sponsor, SEO National. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. Now, what's that, you might say? Well, search engine optimization helps you show up higher on search engines in front of paying customers for words that you as a business owner can monetize. What a great concept. SEO National is owned by my good buddy Damon Burton, who's been a guest here on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Not only has Damon and his team worked with businesses of all sizes, from e-commerce startups to NBA teams and Shark Tank featured businesses, but more importantly, Damon and his team are about transparency, trust, and providing lifetime value. So much so that he still has his first customers after opening SEO National 14 years ago. Let me give you some intentional encouragement and call Damon and his team today at 855-736-6285 or go to www.seonational.com and get a free quote. Lou, you just said something, and Sherri, let's pivot. I want to go here for just a minute.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have said this, and I made a post on LinkedIn a few months back, and I kind of made up my own term, fearleadership, leading in fear instead of conviction. Most great leaders, and Lou, you just alluded to it a moment ago, of leading in conviction, leading with purpose, leading with vision, being able to go, okay, this is what I see at the moment. This is the plan we're going to take. And not to be political, but in my state of West Virginia, what we got on a daily basis was, y'all better mask up or everybody's going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, in a state of 1.8 million people,
Mm-hmm.
and people here in West Virginia, and to a large degree in North Carolina, because they're very similar type people, when you say something to someone, they take you literally.
Mm-hmm.
If it comes out of your mouth, people are going, you must be serious.
Right.
This is a literal translation. And I saw a lot of people, a lot of leaders, and I'll put that in air quotes, acting in fear.
Yeah.
When you were reaching out to your customers, your leaders that you worked with in your companies, what were you seeing? Were you seeing that leading in fear? Were you seeing, how are we going to do this? Maybe almost a hands-up approach. Either one of you can answer this question. And what was the tactic that you specifically used to coach those leaders through that what they were feeling internally?
That's a fantastic question.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a question that every leader needs to ask too, by the way. Do you want me to take that, start off?
Yeah.
You have an idea?
Yeah, I was thinking
Go
we
for
tried
it.
to reach out to some of the local chambers.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, that was just
Good
an
idea.
action.
I love
step.
this back and forth. They're like, do you want to take this question? Do you want me to answer this question? Most people that I would have together would be like, no, that's my question. I'm going to take that question. You know,
Hey,
at least if it were.
You've been married long enough, been in business long enough. It's time to choose your battles, man.
Well,
We
I
both-
would be, Lou, I would be the guy that steps in it, and my wife would I would be answering the question thinking that brilliance was going to come out of my mouth, and my wife would be in the corner just eye rolling like, what in the world are you saying right now? What insanity is proceeding from your mouth right now? This is so much fun. So let's jump back there for a minute. Sherri, would you like to take the question?
As you see, we can give it to each other.
Yeah, I love it.
No, I just wanted to make the point that, you know, just a quick action step of to prove the point there, and Luke can give more, but specifically reached out to chambers that we're a part of, and we really were like, how can we help? We know the community needs needs some guidance, needs that motivation, don't be with your head in the sand. A lot of people were shocked. There was that shell shock approach. And that's what we saw in the smaller communities. So we did our best to reach out, and we had actually some moments, and we shared a positive presentation of leading confusion to clarity. And
going from confusion to clarity. Yeah,
and
that was a good one.
It's great, and it's still to this day we still use it as
yeah.
a presentation for folks, and it's amazing. But here's the kicker: we can step in all we want and do and have the best intentions to keep that going, but how is it received is another question.
Yeah.
I mean, we're the type of philosophy of like, hey, if this is going to touch one person, inspire one person, we did our jobs, right?
Well,
right?
Sherri, let me jump in there. You guys, I love that, and I was taking a note here, and you said you reached out to the local chambers of commerce, and I felt like, at least here, that those folks were not being reached out to like they should have been, because if anybody was being affected by this, it was small business.
That's right.
I mean, they were being crushed, at least here in West Virginia. They were being crushed. And I love what was that moment where you guys said, let's reach out to the Chamber of Commerce? Because that's the first, you're the first persons that I've had a conversation with that took that tactical. And I love that. That is a brilliant tactical approach. What caused you to go that way?
Well, we're chamber members.
We've been plugged into the chamber for a long time now. Anyway, a couple of them. That's number one, because we've been plugged into it. But
Lou, being plugged into it, because I heard, and we would hear business leaders, but we would hear business leaders talking about woe is us.
Yeah.
And I know they were members of their local chambers, but I didn't see a lot of them being proactive and saying, we're coming together and we're going to do what we feel like we can do to help each other. And I got to park here for just a minute. I think that is incredibly insightful and brilliant on your guys' part, that you said, well, this is a no-brainer for us. It's the difference in thinking locally and coming together, instead of saying, well, that guy down the street is my competitor and I'm not going to help him. Hell could freeze over before I help him.
Right.
And you guys just said, we're going to go to our community first. We're going to do this first. Take me through the reaction that you got when you went proactively to your local chamber.
It was twofold. Right. First of all, they were surprised. I mean, they knew us, of course, but they were surprised. They'd have to be, Lou. They would have to have been. Yeah. Which we expected was going to happen. And it was just a matter of, fortunately, we have influence out in our local community, and people really know who we are and our true intent. So it wasn't a shock to them that we would do that. Like, well, I wouldn't expect anything less. But again, like you said, it wasn't something that happened a lot for them during the crisis. But then you have chambers that unfortunately literally buried their head in the sand and they went dark, became really inactive, and then it took them a long time to get. And we tried even reaching out to all of them, and there was some that they tried, but then they just didn't. They were more reactive than they were proactive. That's okay. Everyone has different methods and different ways to handle it, but we had no choice. Listen, Brian, when it comes down to it, okay, Sherri and I preach and teach a lot about influence and how we as leaders, we can influence positive or negative on people. And our goal in anything that we do in our business is to transform people one at a time. And it can't just happen with two of us. Sherri and I can't just together change the world. We've got to do that one person at a time. And in that moment, it was a matter of how can we impact as many small businesses as possible in one shot? Well, why would you not go to the chamber for that? Yeah. In our local community? And then one community at a time is how this all works. And that's really our passion and our purpose. So that's why we did it. It was almost, we didn't really think about it. We're like, well, the chamber must need our help. And let's see what we can do to help them, among other things that we did. But that was just a big one for us. And And it makes a big difference because those things are never forgotten, right?
Well,
the impact that you leave on people just are never forgotten.
And you guys were in an area, and let me go here for just a quick second, and we'll take another break. But you guys were in an area in the Raleigh area where you were at a state capital level where that was going to be important, not only just for your local community, but the ripple effect all through the state of North Carolina, from Asheville to Wilmington to from Mount Airy to Charlotte, north, south, east, west. You guys could have really made being where you are in the Raleigh area in the seat of government, and those people being in those places of making decisions that affected business communities around that. You guys had an opportunity to really do something big there. Did you ever think about the ripple effect of what you were doing and the influence that you were making?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't think I thought about that the first time around. I mean, you just kind of do it. And I think as leaders,
it's just the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And
Sherri, the caffeine's kicking in. I don't know if it's, I can't take credit for that question, but I think the caffeine is kicking in. And so, but again, you think geographically where you guys are at. And a lot of times, and that's why I started the podcast as we record these in the midst of COVID-19, because my perspective in Barbersville, West Virginia is much different than in Raleigh, North Carolina, or in Los Angeles, California, or in Houston, Texas, or, Bangor, Maine. Let's take the far corners of this country. And what you're doing, and the reason I wanted to park on what you guys did with your local chamber is I think it is so important to realize that two people can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
In your community. And people go, well, I'm just one person. I don't know this person. I don't know that person. But when you start going to your local chamber of commerce and going, let us help coach your business leaders, then your business leaders get empowered. Now all of a sudden they're calling their state representative going, we got to get open because I'm fired up. We're ready to go. And you have lit a fire under these people. And now these state leaders are going, these people are blowing me up. We've got to get open, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do that. So that's why I asked the question the way that I did was. So let me jump back to that real quick, and we'll take a break. Did you ever think about the impact you were making?
Yeah, we did. See, we firmly believe that everything that we do impacts it, and we teach this all the time because we believe it impacts and influences people one at a time, and it creates a ripple effect that can impact change. That's our whole purpose here. And so, that is truly our intent. Think about it. Think about any of your favorite teachers or instructors over the years. You pick that one person that just stands out in your mind. That instructor and that teacher, that mentor that you've had, not only impacted you, but it's changed you. It's changed your family. It's changed your kids. It's changed how you do business, changed other people. You see, and this is the type of impact that a CEO and a business leader and someone in corporate America as an executive level can have on their teams at a smaller level if they use their influence on purpose.
Yeah.
It's intentionality. It's having that purpose and being intentional. And that's what we do. And that's what we love to do. We know that we do this intentionally, and we can see the result, the positive result in other people. You can't change the world overnight, like you said, two people, but you can certainly, just one person can make a difference in other people's life.
Yeah. Lou, your passion is just coming through. Your purposes are really coming through. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see when he was answering that, I felt it coming through. And so thank you for doing that. Let's step aside and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to tell Sherri's story. And she alluded to it a moment ago about overcoming a near-death experience. You're going to want to stick around for that. Back in a moment on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Hey, everybody, Brian Sexton. Want to tell you about my new book, People Buy From People, 10 Powerful People Lessons from the Ultimate People Person, my dad. My dad was one of the greatest connectors that I ever knew. And he shared with me 10 connecting principles that I have used throughout my 25-year sales and sales management, customer engagement, and leadership career that I'm passing along to you. If you want to be a stronger, deeper, and more powerful connector, you've got to pick up a copy of People Buy From People. There are concepts in there that you may not realize help make you a power connector. You can go to Amazon and pick it up, Kindle if you're an e-reader and you like to do it that way, or now available on Audible. And there's one other way you can get a copy of People Buy From People. You can get one from me and I'll sign it for you. You go to intentionalmediaandpublishing@gmail.com and send me an email, and I'll share with you the link on how you can get a signed copy. You can buy a signed copy directly from me. Again, People Buy From People. If you want to connect like never before, pick up your copy today of People Buy From People. And now let's get back to more great conversation here on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Sherri, let's tell your story now. It's the right time. And Lou, you hit on it a couple of minutes ago, and please forgive me for kind of pulling back, but I wanted to give you more room and space to really to go into it. Absolutely. So you guys take me back as far back as you want to go in your story together, and the floor is yours. I'm going to shut up for once and let you guys just tell your incredible, amazing story.
I can start it, and then when you get to your part,
sure.
I'd love for you, because you say it better, you lived it.
Okay.
But when Sherri and I got together in 2005 as a couple, we shortly afterwards, within 4 months, we moved in together and started our first business in 2005. And I don't recommend you do that as a brand new couple. But what I will tell you is it wasn't shortly thereafter that I realized that this was going to work, that her and I had some magic that we were going to be able to, at some point, be called to do that was going to change things and change people. And in 2018, we started the Lou Everett group. I started this group, this company. Sherri had a lot of impact on that, but I started the business first. We were both still working for corporate America and working this business as well, so that we can build what we have. We do this now full time. This is our gig, and we've been so blessed to be where we are. But there were so many hurdles and struggles along the way of a business ownership. Anyone out there that owns a business, you know what I'm talking about. I don't even have to get into some of the struggles and hurdles we have to overcome as a business owner. But there was an incident in 2018, near the end on August, that with Sherri, with her, that really solidified why we do what we do. And I'll let Sherri tell her story there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on August 13th of 2018, I found myself in the ICU in the burn center for 10 days.
Hold up. August 13th. That is my birthday. So I mean, good grief, Wow. Yeah, that would have been my 46th birthday, Sherri. I mean, that's, wow, that's a power. I did not know that. You didn't tell me that part of the story. That's pretty incredible. August. So while I was celebrating, probably stuffing my face with cake or something like that, you were in the ICU in the burn unit. So, and forgive me for jumping in there and ruining that. I mean, Lou handed that off so beautifully. I mean, he just handed that off so well, and then I fumbled it. I just jumped in there and fumbled it. So, but no, Sherri, you ended up in the ICU in the burn unit. Take us through that moment.
Yeah. So it started out as a simple cold, and it just kept progressing. And what was happening is that it ended up into this rare disease, and it's actually called MERM, which is a derivative of Stevens-Johnson syndrome. Now, granted, we had no idea what that was. We had to do a crash course of it. Everybody's like, what is that? So we're very big advocates of sharing what it is and how it can occur to anybody. So what was happening was that it was attacking all my good mucous membranes and was revolting. So I was burning from the inside out. Hence, that's why I was in the burn center. Now, with the good doctors, thankfully, I was out in 10 days, and it was a dire situation because Lou described it. It was like The Walking Dead. My eyes were completely red. The whites of my eyes were red. I had blisters on all of my lips, and I could barely swallow.
That burns all in her throat.
Yeah.
How were you feeling before that, though? I mean, did it feel like a heartburn? Did it feel like, why am I so hot all the time? I mean, what were the kind of the trigger points for you to feel like there's just something amiss? There's a difference between there's something amiss and there's like, oh my goodness, something's going on here.
Well, that's the thing about this thing.
Yeah.
And Sherri will continue on about really what we ended up finding out, what was the source cause for this. But it went from cold to pneumonia, just like it was a common cold, and that's what it felt like. And there was a cough, like a really common cold. And then it just wasn't getting better. And then they said, well, they thought she had pneumonia. So it's like it wasn't anything catastrophic yet. Mm-hmm. And then literally, like it was like a day. It seemed like one day, the whites of her eyes were fine and she was recovering from pneumonia. And the next day, literally, she came into me and I was like, what is going on?
And you guys had no idea because, again, to your point, Lou, you just thought, well, we'll get some antibiotics. We'll treat it just like you would do anything. Yeah.
That's right. Went to the doctor, had antibiotics, and the doctor, that's exactly what we were doing.
Right.
And we knew something was wrong. And that's when I said, you've got to go to the ER. We've got to take you to the ER. Mm-hmm. And then that's when they said, this is something different. This is what the doctor said. I think this is this rare disease. We've got to get you over to UNC in Chapel Hill, where they can take care of you there in the burn center, because they're the ones that are going to take care of these things. And we're like, what is happening? And they transported her over there. It was like, it's all blur. It was so quick.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have an amazing medical community. For those that don't kind of get that perspective, we here in this area, there are quite a few people that go to Duke University in Durham. Mm-hmm. That's not real far, about 45 minutes or so from where you guys are at. There's UNC in Chapel Hill. You guys have an amazing medical community in the triad. And for those that aren't aware, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill is called the triad. It's that area down there, the triangle area of. There's the research triangle. There's a lot going on medically in those areas. So, Sherri, I've got to ask you this. You're in the hospital and you're in the burn unit. They're taking you to the burn unit. You think you and Lou think it's a cold, and now all of a sudden you're in the burn unit because there's blisters everywhere and things like that. Were you in a lot of pain? How were you dealing with this emotionally and physically, knowing that you and Lou had, you just went out on your own with your business and now you're facing this struggle? Take me through your emotional situation at the time.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely scared because you didn't know what it was. I think the most pain, it wasn't even like the blisters that would pop up on my skin. I mean, Lou took a look at my back and I had blisters
that were coming up on her skin
underneath that took up my whole wingspan. And I that didn't bother me, which you would think it would. It was my throat. You know how if we get a cold sore or we get a blister, like one blister in your mouth or something, and it's annoyance, right? It's like, you gotta be careful. You can't really chew your food. Well, picture that, but like
1,500 times worse, all down your esophagus.
Yeah, all the way went down to my esophagus, where you couldn't even chew or drink one side or the other of your mouth because it was on both sides and also on the top. So I think that was the most painful.
Your eyes too.
Yeah, my eyes didn't hurt so much. It just looked worse than it was.
So even water, even something that you thought would be soothing to the throat, because you think that
ice cream, nothing.
Ice,
nothing.
No,
nothing was able to soothe those blisters. and things like
and
that.
we didn't know it was blister. I thought it was just like a sore throat. So we did we do like the, gargling and maybe warm water or apple cider vinegar.
Like you normally would do when you had a cold or.
But that just made it, that's just burned. I was like, you don't understand. I go, this is like swallowing glass. Like, this is really bad. And I ended up being on a feeding tube. Thank goodness I barely remember it. I was just kind of delirious, I think, at that point.
Yeah, you were.
So I'm so glad.
Medication. She was delirious, but she was on a feeding tube. She had a procedure done on her eyes as well to try to protect her eyes from going blind, because that was a possibility. They literally had to address every single symptom. There wasn't a cure. So they addressed every single symptom. And one of those, the important ones was her eyes. And they had to have this procedure done on her eyes. And at one point, and I took a picture of this and I still have it as remembrance. And I look over and she's on the bed. Mind you, she's out of it. And she had a feeding tube. Her eyes were covered up after this procedure. And again, at that moment, the doctors couldn't tell me if she was going to live or die at all. They didn't know. They thought, well, maybe she could be here for 30 days, maybe 60 days, but she may not make it, or she could be blind. We don't really know. You'll never believe what the doctors found out was the root cause of all this.
What was it, Sherri?
Well, the reason why we share this story, and this is part of our passion, is because prior to this, I was actually in a work environment that was very high sales, very high crash and burn type of environment. So that part wasn't so bad, but it was the constant berating and the expectations of working 70 plus hours a week just to make sure that you met your metrics and, hey, your job's on the line, as well as verbal abuse. So it turned into a very toxic work environment. And it didn't start out that way, but leadership at that time was more focused on the bottom line than they were valuing their employees.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And the doctors, 15 doctors were on this team.
I felt like a Dr. House episode.
I walked in the room.
Like dating ourselves. It was like, seriously, as I was coming to, it was like, oh, I'm a like Dr. House
episode.
Lou, I
walk in and literally these doctors were just brilliant.
Yeah.
They were just so good at what they did and what they were doing. And they were just so caring. I've never seen a team that worked as diligently as they did on Sherri's case. But when they would ask me questions, because Sherri was so in and out, where did she work? What kind of environment is it? By the time we were done, all of them would say, that's where it started right there.
Were you surprised, Lou, that they asked you about her work environment? Because again, walking me through the steps, you're thinking, oh, it's just a cold, it's pneumonia. It almost sounds like an autoimmune disease that was creeping up from some point. But then you get to the root part of it, and you're probably, were you concerned? Like, why are they asking me about where she works and what she does? Did that ever cross your mind?
That's the thing, Brian. It did. We both knew that what she was working in, it was a toxic environment. We knew it. And she, there was people even at her job, on her teams that were getting ill. And there's just some stories there with that we don't have to get into today with other people on that team, but we knew it. I knew it. She knew it. And the whole, there was a plan of, while we're building this business, our plan is to hopefully at some point we don't have to deal with that anymore. But somebody else had other plans for us at that moment. So we knew it because standing from where we were, we have 4.5 decades of experience in leadership and management, and we've been through the learning curves, and I've made a lot of mistakes over the years in leadership, and had to learn from my coaches and mentors and my training what really the most effective leaders are in a positive influence side. And we could see it from a million miles away, the change in structure of leadership where she worked that was just creating this toxic environment. We could see it, and it began to just really impact her in a way that we couldn't do anything about until this happened. When
you began to get better, Sherri, and then there was light at the end of the tunnel, and you knew, okay, I've had these procedures, and you get to the 9th, 10th day. You mentioned you were in the hospital 10 days with this. When you got out of the hospital, when you felt like saying, okay, it's time to what was your first thought? Were you angry? Were you kind of take me through some of those emotions? Because Lou, I heard you say, listen, from this, we knew exactly what we had to do in our business and knew exactly how we needed to proceed and go. Did you guys have to work through the anger and frustration part before getting to clarity? Or was that pretty immediate when Sherri was on the mend? Like, this is now our new mission for our business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely had a newfound purpose after that.
Yeah.
And I took the time and the space because I needed the time to heal, which still healing. I still get a chronic cough and I do have some, chronic dry eyes, but heck, it's better than death and
better
wine.
Than the alternative.
So
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had definitely a newfound purpose after that, and wanted to speak into the leadership playing field of this can be prevented. Yes, you can be $1 billion company and be profitable, but at what cost? And the more we share this story out to people, the more people are relate, and they can take a sigh of, I can't explain that. Like when we see people, we share this story, they're like, oh my gosh, wow, I went through some, not that catastrophic, but wow, I had anxiety, I have triggers, the emotional trauma is devastating. And now with COVID, it's even worse. Right. So that's pulled in there, but I'm just saying, it's just that, we really had that focus of like, leadership is not positional. It's influence, more, nothing less.
Right. Well, Sherri, you and the reason I asked about anger and things like that, I could, if that, and Lou, I don't want to speak for you. I'm speaking for me in this moment. If that were my wife and that environment was causing her difficulty, somebody's going to pay. Just a little West Virginia hillbilly justice coming out in me, but because that's the woman that you love more than anything. And you're just like, I can't believe that this pressure and stress and toxicity and things like that is happening. I commend the both of you for pushing that aside and making the focus about we're out to be warriors for change in a corporate environment and things like that.
Yeah.
We could tell your story for an hour. I want to be respectful of the time, your time and our audience's time. What's the biggest piece of intentional encouragement? And Lou, I feel like this is the right time. And Sherri, I feel like it's the right time to bring that home and share that, because there could be somebody listening to us. And we were talking before we started recording that says, I'm in a toxic relationship with work, but it's my livelihood. I've got to pay the bills. I've got to put food on the table.
Right.
And I don't know how to leave. I faced a similar situation. I felt like being in food service for 15 years, I was trapped.
Yeah.
I tried to get out and do other things, and I just felt trapped. And my year of transition was 2009 when I had weight loss surgery, and, that I finally did get out. And there are people that are feeling trapped, Lou and Sherri, because they don't know where to go or what to do. Yeah. Share with folks your biggest piece of intentional encouragement around that.
Yeah, that's good for you.
Here's something to think about. And it took me a long time to really kind of hone this in on my own. If you can, couple things. If you can think it, you can do it. Thoughts do not enter your mind unless you have the ability to make it happen. That is the amazing part of being a human, is if we can think it, we can do it. There's things that, I don't think about. And that's why all of a sudden you turn on the Discovery Channel or something. I'm like, that exists? Because I never thought of it. I'm not going to I can't create that, obviously, because I'm not that smart or whatever. But the other things, though, that we have thought of, you can do it. It's doable. It takes work. I've never said it's easy, because I would lie. There is no such thing as a straight line to the top. Every single thing that's worth it is uphill. Everything that's worth it is uphill, but it's worth it. And a question that I'll just pose out there to anyone that's in a situation where they feel trapped, in a situation of a toxic work environment, is what's worth it? What has more value to you? Life or the enduring of the toxic work environment to pay your bills? We have to put food on the table. And I'm not telling you to quit your job. What I am telling you is that your value and your purpose in life is bigger than you. It's bigger than that business and that company. Okay, it's bigger than the money that you bring in to put food on the table. Step into that and lean into that more. And how can you do that? Connect with people in your community. The power in numbers is just unbelievable. The support you can receive. You have a thought. You can make it happen. We're proof of it. There's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people that are proof of that. Lean into those people, into the community that are successful. You'll be amazed at how many people will help you. I can't tell you how blessed we are to have people in our circle that have always been there to give us the support when we need it, so that we can do the same thing for other people. One last thing.
Yeah.
I can't help myself, but it's coming out. And this one here, I think, is so important. You can only give at the limit of your own growth. You can't give anymore. We all say we love our family. I do everything for my family and all my kids. Well, you do everything for them. What is that everything? That everything is at your limit. In order to give them more, you have to grow yourself more.
Yeah.
It's not selfish. We have this thing that we think it's selfish to develop ourselves because we're taking away time from our family. You have to. Mm-hmm. If you want to give more to those that you love, you have to grow yourself first. Otherwise, you're going to be limited on what it is that you can give to them or anybody for that matter. It's so important. It's not selfish at all. As a matter of fact, it's the most unselfish thing you can do for you and your family and your community is to grow yourself in any way you can because you have more to give when you do.
Man, powerful. I can't add anything else more than that. Man, what a powerful way to bring it home. Lou, Sherri, tell folks how they can connect with you guys. Let folks know where they can get your resources. I'm telling you, when people hear this conversation, they're going to want to reach out to you and connect.
Please do.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, you can reach us at lewevergroup.com. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. And you can also Google, Lou Everett, and then we'll pop right up.
Yeah.
But feel free to reach out. We're very open. Yes, we actually answer our phone.
Yeah.
And
phone numbers on the website. There's a contact us there. And there's information on our services and things. And we love to chat. So feel free to just reach out and we'd love to have a conversation.
You two are a powerhouse. You guys are a powerhouse couple. And, man, this has been incredibly powerful. From the bottom of my heart, thank you both for choosing this podcast to share your story. It has been an honor to have you both here, and I've loved our conversation. This won't be the last one, I'll tell you that. If I can have more husbands and wife that brought the thunder like you guys did, I'm grateful for that. Lou Everett, Sherri McManus, thank you both for joining me today on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having us, Brian. We'd love to come back.
My thanks as always to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And of course, the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through his word. If you're not subscribed to the Intentional Encourager podcast, hit the subscribe button wherever you get podcasts so you don't miss an exciting episode where you can get encouraged and stay encouraged. And remember, anyone, anywhere, at any time, any place can be an intentional encourager.